Greetings. Is it morning? Yes, it's 9 o'clock LA time. It's noon on the East Coast, 11 o'clock down in Central and Texas. Greetings to all of y'all, all the Black Power media family, old and new. This is Rootwork. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga. How y'all doing? It's been so long since I've talked to you all live. Since I've talked to you all live as Rootwork, I was on, Remix Morning Show yesterday promoting my new books. But yeah, it's been rough. That's why I haven't been here to talk with you all in so long. It's been rough. I've been trying to get things together. And as I've been trying to get things together, a lot was going on, but there were some things that just, I know I'm about to use a cliche and sound old. When I say they stuck in my craw, man, yeah, had me feeling some kind of way. I said, I need to talk about this on Black Power Media, but I just couldn't seem to get it together. So we're going to talk about it today. They're not as these, what we're going to talk about today is not that recent, but it's still relevant. It still bothers me. I got to get it off my chest, and I have asked a comrade by the name of Arturo Dominguez to help me get it off my chest, to help me put it into perspective, some of these issues that are bothering me, issues what I call ideological warfare via the media. Arturo Dominguez is an anti racist activist and journalist based in Texas. He's the founder of The Antagonist, a platform for marginalized voices to discuss issues of race, culture, identity, politics, and society. He is also a reporter for the Capital Press newsletter, where he covers human rights and racial justice issues. You can follow along with Arturo at Extreme Arturo on social media. Arturo, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, because I kept rescheduling, canceling and rescheduling. Thank you so much for hanging in with me, being patient. I really appreciate that.
No, yeah. Been like I said, been looking forward to this.
So I wanted to talk with you in particular because I know that you are based in Texas, and I
Mhm.
thought it would be a good idea. Now, for y'all BPMers, I see some folks coming into the chat. I'm gonna get over to there in a second. But if you've been a if you've been a viewer of Rootwork in the past, you know I be having technological issues. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm still having issues. But at any rate, let me see if I can share this screen real quick. Now, okay. Let's see. Okay. So this was the first thing I wanted to talk about. This is from the Washington Post, January of this year. Superintendent praises conformity in defense of suspending black teen. Now, this is, he's 18 now, Daryl George, down in Texas, who was suspended from school, high school, because of his dreadlock hairstyle. Now, we've had instances before where black children, excuse me, have been discriminated against because of their hairstyle. Black adults, predominantly women, have been discriminated against because of their natural hairstyle. But what really got me about this child is that the school superintendent took out a full page ad. I believe it was in the Houston Chronicle newspaper, defending his suspension of this team. He didn't sit for an interview. He didn't write an op ed. He took out a full page ad. And when I saw that, I immediately thought about Donald Trump paying for not one, but several full page ads in New York papers calling for the death penalty to be reinstated because of the Central Park Five. That's what they were known as then. The five young brothers who were accused of raping a young white woman who was out jogging in Central Park. now known as the Exonerated Five. And it took me back to the ads that slave masters would place in newspapers advertising their runaways. And what I said, well, this is an act of war. This is warfare. This is nothing but pure, unadulterated warfare, declaring war on Black people, Black children. So, like I said, this happened at the end of January. I've been meaning to come on BPM and talk about it. Couldn't get it together. Couldn't get it together. Time goes on. There's such a thing as a news cycle, stuff being recent. But I said, no, I have to address this. I don't care how long it takes. This is nothing but straight up war. That was my initial reaction. So, Arturo, please chime in.
Well, this is actually a very relevant story today because they're in court today.
Hmm.
Um,
So I'm
the
right on time, in other words.
exactly. The timing couldn't be better.
Hmm.
We may not hear what the rulings are going to be, while we're on the show, but they
Hmm.
are in court today. The family is filed suit against Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton, I believe it is, because in September, Texas passed the Crown Act.
Hmm.
And, the Crown Act is supposed to protect people from being discriminated against with their hair, especially if it's, um, how did they word this? Let's see, discriminate. It says the Crown Act is to protect students in a classroom environment from being discriminated against for, quote, hairstyles commonly or historically associated with race. So they're suing Greg Abbott for not enforcing that law, which took effect in September.
Hmm.
Um, Now, the Barber School District policy says boys can't have hair down past the collar. We've heard all that for a long time, but there's and I'm 30 miles from where this is all taking place, so I'm not real sure what the school looks like indoors. But there's people from the area who say that the white kids, boys, are allowed to have their long hair, and there's no issue.
Hmm.
And his hair is not, the dreadlocks are not down below the collar. And
Hmm.
I looked up the school policy and it says any hair that can go past the collar. So if it's tied up and you let it down, you're technically not allowed to have it. But state law typically overrules local ordinances and local laws. So to me, this is a clear violation of the Crown Act that was passed in
Hmm.
September.
Hmm.
And, and well, it came into law in September. And Greg Abbott not acting and the parents suing them for that, I think is justifiable. Now, what the judge decides, I don't know. As far as the ad goes, the ad to me, okay, it's hard not to go from this ad to the Trump ad to the ads you mentioned about trying to recapture escaped and enslaved people from back in the day. It's hard not to make that connection because the history is pretty continuous. There's never been a time where these ads weren't put in the paper. That, I just turned 50 and this has been going on my whole life. So the ad to me, I agree with you that it's somewhat of a declaration of war because to me the ad was meant to shift public perception and put pressure on the judge to rule in favor of the Barbers Hill School District. Um, I find it one of the things about the ad that really, really irritated me the most was how the superintendent tried to portray himself as a victim.
Oh, don't they always?
So,
Go ahead.
right, right. So he says, and I'm going to quote it it says, I am being intruded by school officials and treated like a dog. I am subjected to cruel treatment and a lot of unkind words from many adults within the school, including teachers, principals, and administrators. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, do you not at any point give a damn what you're doing to this child? Like you're worried about this. You're putting this child through all this traumatic nonsense for no reason. Just let it go. If it's that big of a problem for you, let it go. Why? You know what I mean? It doesn't it, that was really weak of him to try to portray himself as a victim and the whole ad reeked of white supremacy, from comments about that reek of assimilation and all that stuff that dates back to pre-revolutionary war. The xenophobia and then racism and assimilation conversation, all this stuff dates way back to the founders. And a lot of people don't realize that, but it
Mhm.
does. The rhetoric never changed, but the targets have. And for Benjamin Franklin, he feared the Germanization of the colonies. And then throughout history, you see them target different non-white groups.
Mhm.
And the rhetoric is the exact same thing. They argued that Germans weren't assimilating, just like they argued, you know, the formerly enslaved, people in the U.S. Didn't assimilate after, the abolition of the so-called abolition of slavery,
Mhm.
because the 13th Amendment. Anyway,
Mhm.
uh, but because of it's never changed. There's always a target, and it's always a non-white group, and
Mhm.
assimilation is always used as a weapon.
Mhm.
And I think this, when he said, quote, being an American requires conformity with the positive benefit of unity. We have taken the highly unusual step of seeking a declaratory judgment in state district court to verify our interpretation of the law. You see what I'm saying? Like, requires conformity to what?
Exactly. Well, white supremacy.
Right, right. Like, you're the white man dictating what conformity is. So it's the same shit. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, but it is. I
Yeah,
mean, it's the
you
same.
can. It's the internet. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
out.
same shit. So yeah, it's just a continuation of just these white supremacist policies, and then to take out ads to try to sway public opinion. Like, for cops do that with the media, right? They go out there and they demonize somebody who may have been killed. They might try to make that person look like a bad guy, and they're shifting public perception to essentially like justify some unarmed person's death, or to justify somebody's death in jail. Like, look at his record, and they shift public perception. They taint jury pools. It makes it hard to actually see justice in a system where authority figures have all the access to media and can control narratives.
Hmm.
For independent guys like me, it's really hard to go up against corporate newsrooms and things like that. So it's a constant battle. It really is a constant battle. And just when you think you're making headway, something like this happens, and then the full page ad pops up, and then you all of a sudden you feel like we're going backward again.
And in addition to using the media as a declaration of war, the
Mm,
media's complicity in accepting this ad and running it. This is not. You're not a Donald Trump. You're not a private individual businessman. You are the superintendent of the school system, and you're taking out an ad defending your decision to punish this student. First of all, where did that money come from? And why
mm,
wasn't it invested into the schools? That's first of all. Second of all, what are you doing? As I mentioned earlier, why didn't you write an op ed? Why didn't you ask for an interview? Why are you taking out a full page ad like the slave catcher, slave master you are? I guess I just answered my own question.
right. I think you did. I think you did. Um,
It's just,
and
I am disgust. Can you tell I'm disgusted?
I mean, you and I both. Like, for us here in the Houston area, this is on the news constantly,
Hmm.
um, and like, we see it nonstop. And I really, I can't help but feel for that child. Like, how can you do this? Like, it just doesn't. I feel like this is just an attempt by white supremacy to challenge a law that protects Black people. That's what this is. That's what this is.
White supremacy is as white supremacy does. Yes,
Right, right, right.
absolutely.
And I
Hmm.
think it was intentional. I think, like, Greg Abbott using immigrants as props, this guy is using one of his students as a prop to try to challenge a law. And that's what this feels like to a lot of us here in Houston. This is what we're seeing. Like, if you see this story on CBS Nightly News, you're not going to get the full story. You're just going to get the little bits. Like you might see it tonight because of the court date, but you're not going to get all the details that we're getting here locally. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really, I mean, frankly, it's disgusting. It really is.
It's
It
disgusting.
really is.
And in addition to taking out full page ads, um, rec- um, in addition to slave masters taking out full page ads advertising rewards for their runaways, editors of newspapers, owners of newspapers would call for the lynching of black people. They would announce when and where the lynching was going to take place. And after the lynching, they would give a literal blow by blow description of the lynching that took place. So the collusion of the media, the superintendent going to the media, and the media slavishly colluding with him. I am so disgusted right now, and I hope that there are some folks in Houston who are organizing against that superintendent and that newspaper. Do you have any information on that?
Well, organizing against the superintendent, yeah, there's, I consider Houston lucky to have people like Quan LX here,
Hmm.
um, because he'll get in people's
He's an
faces over it.
agitator. Yeah, he'll agitate. Yeah.
Right. And I love that about him. But as far as against the paper, I haven't really seen anything. A lot of people are pretty upset about it. The idea that they would even accept that as an ad or
Exactly. Exactly.
even make that as an editorial decision.
Hmm.
Like, I would like to know how that decision was made and who
Hmm.
was part of that decision making
Who
process.
approved this? Who approved this?
Right, right. Like, who
Yeah.
approved it? And, was it even a question? Did they even question it, or did they just run it?
Right. Did they question?
Because
Did they struggle over it? They need to
right,
be
right.
held. That media institution needs to be held accountable. They need to feel some trim. They need to tremble. They need to be in their office scared that some folks are going to who ride, as we used to say, on their office. That's really what needs to happen.
Yeah,
I would,
I
I would be
I
willing
think
to. I'd be willing to drive down there to help y'all. But no, let me not talk about crossing state lines. Let me not do that. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I do think that there's an occasion for really putting pressure on media outlets. And regarding the Houston Chronicle, despite some of the great work that they do, this kind of cancels that stuff out because you tend to overlook some of the great stuff. There are great reporters there. I know some that are really great reporters, but at the end of the day, every reporter is subject to the decisions of producers and editors and things like that. So
Mhm.
I can tell you it wasn't a reporter that approved that ad, right?
Right,
Easy. It
right.
wasn't a regular reporter. These are higher ups. These are the money people. These are, and that's where the accountability and I think the pressure needs to be applied. And I don't think we do that enough. Um, but I do think that there has to be accountability for something like this because it's the whole point is to drive narratives and shift, like I said, shift public perceptions, taint jury pools. It's the same thing every institution in this country does. From corporate to police to the schools, they all use media as a tool to shift public perception and justify inhumanity and many cases murder. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's weird because one of the guys I work with, Pablo, he mentioned to me in a conversation the other day about journalism and reporting in general has been over professionalized in the sense that people are afraid to say certain things because they might lose access to a certain politician or a
Right.
police chief or a police department and things like that. You know, then you have guys like us who aren't afraid to say those things. And if they try to shut it, I mean, they can try to shut us out, but they really can't because we're press,
Mhm.
so they would be violating our First Amendment right if they did that. And when you
Mhm.
really, really think about it and you shift the way you think about how these agencies and institutions use media, They need the media more than we need them.
Mm-hmm.
They have to answer to us. So reporters in general, on a broad sense, corporate media, wherever, need to stop worrying about pissing people off. That's the job. The job is pissing people off. The job is holding them accountable. If somebody
Mm-hmm.
says something's racist, you don't call that guy a far right activist. You call that guy a racist. You don't call David Duke from the Klan a far right activist. No,
Mm-hmm.
he's the former Grand Wizard of the Klan, flat out
Mm-hmm.
racist, plain and simple.
Plain and simple.
There's no other way to put it, you know. So the way a lot of media tiptoes around calling things what they are, and I'm sure we're going to get to Palestine here in a minute, but calling things what they are can be frustrating at times from a standpoint of somebody who's still trying to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be, and allowing full page ads like that's not doing the job. That's not doing the job. That's not speaking truth to power. That's empowering people in power.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where people start losing the mission of the whole journalism job.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah. Disgusting and
Yeah.
frustrating. Now,
Yeah.
before I leave from this quote unquote topic, I want to hop over here to our BPM chat real quick. A lot of folks saying peace and greetings. Thought I'd just share a couple of comments. Chitma Chitimaka Masha Maka 1025, a full page ad. So it was worth spending money to get the point across. Well, yeah, in white supremacy it was, yeah. Black men have been dealing with hair discrimination since the beginning of employment. I'm sure black women have been also. Yep, tip of the spear.
Mm.
Tip of the spear, war. It is definitely warfare. You know, Imari Obadele, one of the founders of the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa, one of the founders of NCOBRA, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, he used to have this saying, you know, war is declared by one group on another. And, you know, one group declares war, the other group accepts that declaration, etc., and so on. He says, black people might not be at war, but we are in a war. We may not
Right.
have accepted the declaration. We may not necessarily be fighting back at full capacity, but make no mistake about it, we are in a war. And like I said, that was the first thing that came to my mind. I mean, you know, that was where my mind went. Not that this is racist, not that this is discrimination. This is an act of war when you take out a full page ad. Let's see.
Yeah.
David Silberg, in
There's,
this day and age, you have to claim to be a victim, especially when you're the oppressor. Yeah,
well, that's true. That's true.
wow. I heard Dick Gregory cite a study where over 60% of white participants were triggered by the sight of black people in an MRI scan. It's ingrained subconsciously. I wholeheartedly believe that.
I do too. I do too.
Hmm. It's not hyperbole to describe this as cultural genocide. Oh, it's genocide, but it's also warfare. Absolutely warfare.
I agree with that. The cultural genocide.
Mm-hmm.
We see it all the time in the Latino community.
Mm-hmm.
People trying to get us to assimilate, speak English, this and that. They're trying to erase our culture. So and unless we do, it was in the early 1920s. Several presidents said that hyphenated Americans aren't Americans.
Right.
Think about it. Here we are, 100 years later. How many hyphenated Americans do we have? And then white people are just white,
White or
right?
American. They're the
Right.
default.
They're not European. Right. 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 So everybody else who's not white, who's not considered white, is a hyphenated American. Therefore, we're not American. And that, to me, that's been the policy. That's been the viewpoint. That it certainly feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 100 years.
Okay. So now like I said, I had to get that off my chest. I
Yeah,
really was not paying attention to the news cycle, so I was not aware that today they were having the either the trial began or there were arguments being given today in this case of Daryl George's suspension. But like I said, it's been bothering me since I first heard about it, and this is really the first chance I got to kind of breathe a little bit. I said I got to go on the air, and I'm thank you so much, Arturo, for coming on with me. So this
sure.
was that was the main thing that was bothering me. The next thing that chapped my hide, as we say, or as I say, ain't nobody else saying it but me. This is from fairness and accuracy in recording. In reporting, fairness and accuracy in reporting. If BPMers, if you're not familiar with FAIR, you should check out their newsletter. They are consistently calling out and calling attention to bias and just outright thuggery in media. They also have different actions you can take, activism updates, media kits, etc. This is from the end of January. Also, this all of this came crashing down on me at the same time. The end of January. It's taking me a month to get to it. New York Times engages in front page IDF, Israeli Defense Force, women washing. Not pink washing, not green washing, but women washing. So, what are they talking about? Read this real quick. If you read the Global Times, an English language daily owned by China's Communist Party, you will catch stories about the forward thinking gender politics of the People's Liberation Army. Just last year, readers found out that the PLA is recruiting female carrier based aircraft pilots for the first time. And before that, the paper bragged that women in the PLA are showing valor and fortitude no less than men. Now, again, let's see. Trying to. Oh, where'd you go, Arturo? I didn't. Got rid of Arturo. There we go. Okay. I don't know how big that's going to look, but I'm going to keep going. The paper hailed 10 women who hurdled the training as operators of the country's most advanced tank, reporting that internet commentators call them modern day Mulans. It even ran a photo spread of the beautiful female soldiers of the PLA with the help of China's state wire service. I believe that's pronounced Xinhua. Now, here we get to the crux of the issue. In the West, articles like these tend to be disregarded as government advertising that sugarcoats the country's military expansion by portraying it as some kind of social progress, i.e., propaganda. Because the paper is party owned and China ranks 179 out of 180 on Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index, it's hard not to be skeptical of these pieces' intentions to bolster the image of the army. One should bring that same skepticism when reading a top New York Times story, Israeli women fighting on the front lines, a first, centrally located above the fold on the front page of the Saturday print edition with a dimly lit lead photograph of two women IDF troops conversing as another watches them. That's the photo over here. The piece, which was reported by Jerusalem correspondent Isabel Kirshner as she traveled with the IDF within the Gaza Strip, reported that female combat soldiers and officers are serving on the front line for the first time since the war surrounding the establishment of Israel in 1948. The Times reported this as the end of a domestic feud between conservative traditionalists and forward thinkers, saying, quote, the question of women serving at the front pitted ultra conservative rabbis and religiously observant soldiers against feminists, secularists, and critics of the country's traditionally macho culture. The paper declared now that debate is effectively over. There is no inherent problem with writing about the concept of women in combat, which is a newsworthy event. The issue here is how the story was framed. Their inclusion has helped bolster the image of the Army domestically, the Times related, even as it helped them to do the same thing internationally. That helps at a time when intelligence failures that may have allowed the October 7th attacks to take place have been scrutinized in Israel. So basically, Israeli women are now a full on part of the genocide that is carrying on, that is currently going on, currently happening in Gaza, in Palestine. Hip, hip, hooray.
Yay, white feminism.
Hooray. Yay for white feminism.
Right. What is this? Like,
What is WTF is this?
right.
And I don't have the link at the moment, but I think it was just to this morning I was scanning as I should have been doing something else, probably sleeping, scanning Instagram, and I saw a picture of a group of female Israeli soldiers. You know, they were taking a selfie at some bombed out something or another. Yeah, okay.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, let me hold on. Let me grab this one real quick. Also, let's see. What does this say? Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's it. A person on uh somebody on Instagram. I want to say it was black. Well, it's black leftist somebody. I don't know who it is. But anyway, they said that Palestinians getting severe infections from a lack of menstrual products should be a massive feminist reproductive rights issue right now. So much should be an issue right now. That is not.
Right.
But yeah, so the New York Times engaging in what's called woman washing, the attempt to wash the stink away from something by equating it with progress on the gender or feminist front. So that was the second thing that got my gears grinding after the incident with Daryl George and the superintendent taking out this front page ad. Your thoughts, Arturo?
Yeah, it's so much the same, right? Like,
Mhm.
again, weaponizing the media to try to, whitewash history, to try to frame narratives, to trying to shift conversations. When we're talking Israel too, like, we can't pretend the media is not biased here, right? Like, from day one, they just bought all the nonsense and reported it as if it was true and real. This was like the Iraq War all over again, when they were claiming that Iraqis were unplugging incubators and, babies were dying in the hospital. None of that was true either.
Mhm.
It's to try to manufacture consent for whatever it is they're doing, whether it's kicking a black kid out of school, committing genocide on a group of people, anything to help justify inhumanity, to help justify death and slaughter for what? For corporate profits. You know what I mean? It doesn't benefit anybody here in this country. The war in Iraq didn't help us. The war in Afghanistan didn't do nothing for us. They say, oh, all the money we're giving Ukraine, it gets spent here in the US. Yeah,
Mhm.
making weapons that kill people. That doesn't justify it. You're still
Mhm.
killing tens of thousands of people every year. Just because you're spending money here at home doesn't make it better. So it actually makes it worse because it's our weapons that are killing them.
Mhm.
So that's what this is. That's what the woman washing, that's what this is. You're being, for being what? For being progressive? For being what? Like, they're still committing genocide here. You're like,
Equal opportunity.
hello.
Yeah.
Right, right. Now you have women doing it too, so we're supposed to applaud that. I
There
don't.
are, what'd you say you don't?
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to applaud that. I can't see how anybody would.
There are so many issues related to the well being of women and children that white feminists are ignoring in Palestine. It is mind boggling. This is when Sojourner Truth comes to mind. Now we understand what she's talking about when she asks, "Ain't I a woman? These are not women. What's happening to them is not a crime, is not something that feminism should be concerned about." Is that what's happening there? These aren't women. These are not people. Are they not women? Are they not people?
Yeah, that's that's a deep. That's deep. That's deep because yeah, when it's white women, they're people, right? But Palestinian women apparently not. Black women apparently not.
White
It
supremacy is the glue that binds all of this. It doesn't matter.
right.
We see this anti racism, feminism, and pro LGBTQ positions in the service of racism and war. Absolutely. Whether it's disability and ableism, whether it is age, whether it is sexuality, whether it is class, whether it is gender, feminism, white supremacy binds all white people. The benefits that Dr. W.B. Du Bois talked about, the, what does he call it? I forgot the word he called it, but it's like a particular form of capitalism, not capitalism, of currency that white people get from the opportunity or the fairy tale belief that they are also part of this system, and you too can rise to the top if you simply support this status quo. The I want to say, I guess their cultural. He talks about it in Black Reconstruction. I'm drawing a blank on what it is now, but it's like this cultural capital, tangibles, cultural capital tangibles that white people get from being or from accepting white supremacy, even though their economic or class position puts them at odds with the upper class. Just the idea that they are considered to be white like the upper class, that they could possibly join the upper class one day, causes them to be in support of white supremacy. It is the glue that binds, whether they are disabled, whether they are females, whether they have a different sexuality, regardless.
Yeah, yeah. That's deep. That was deep. Yeah. I keep
I
thinking
think
the
that
back.
is psychological wage. Yeah, the wages, psychological ways. Yes.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, and it brings me back to the kid, the here at Barbers Hill. The student suspended from school. It just that's what this is. You know, that's what that is, and it's the same for like you look at the maternal mortality rate for Black women. Um, hell, you look at hate crimes against Black people. There's Black people are still number one on the list for being targeted by hate crimes. I don't care what, the Anti Defamation League likes to play Oppression Olympics. Oh, look at what they, and I'm fine. I'm all for calling out anti Semitism and things, but, you don't play Oppression Olympics. And at the end of the day, that's what Black people are targeted more because cops don't do anything. They
Mhm.
do a lot less, So it's a nonstop battle, right? If they allowed some of the shit from back in the day, they'd still be doing it. And the psychological aspect of all these things, you know, demonizing non-white people in the media, and that translates to civil society, to daily interactions at the freaking Starbucks or at McDonald's or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And people just need to be held more accountable for these things, because the psychological toll it has on everybody is obvious. It convinces white people that it's okay to look down on non-white people. It creates fear among non-white groups. It drives a lot of hate. Like, the whole, a perfect example, because it was so recent, all the hype about the quote unquote border crisis, right? Like, it
Mm-hmm.
drove these crazy MAGA extremist dudes to create a convoy and come to Texas so they could show up and be like, where's all the invasion? There's nothing. Because it's not that. It's not what the media is trying to say. It's not a crisis like that.
No, it's not.
If they say 2 million people came in last year, well, a million of those were turned away at the border, but they
Mm-hmm.
counted as encounters. So you think 2 million people crossed the border, but they didn't. They were turned away. And the media doesn't tell you that part. So everybody thinks there's this flood, and you got these right wingers with their cameras, and they're getting in Africans' faces and in Haitians' faces, and where are you from? Where are you going? Why are you coming to the U.S.? Like, and Border Patrol allows them to just harass and interrogate non-white migrants at the border. But like, have you heard anything about the tens of thousands of Ukrainians that were resettled in New York City, given jobs, housing, food? No, you didn't hear about those white people, did you? You just got to hear about the Latinos they left in the street,
Well,
right? And the Haitians and the Africans that are left in the street.
the immigration policy has always favored white immigrants.
Oh
White,
man,
it was
yeah, yeah,
white immigrants came to this country and,
yeah,
and, and brought enslaved Africans, brought Chinese to build the railroads, would not
yep,
allow them to bring their mates,
right,
so they can keep a cap on reproduction. Stole the Southwest. We ain't got to talk about that part, or do we?
yeah,
I'm clear.
yeah. No, you're right.
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm clear. I'm in Mexico. I'm in northern Mexico.
Yeah,
I'm very,
right,
very clear.
right.
So yeah, white immigration will always be favored, always be favored, always be favored.
It's so crazy to me how, and that's part of it, right? The media narratives help bolster that.
The
You got guys like
well,
you got guys like Elon Musk. That every time a migrant commits a crime, they're like, "Oh, look, they're all bad. They're all criminals." And it's like, dude, no, they're not. But that dude is, and he should pay the price for what he did. But they're not all that way, and that's part of it. They use these terms like illegals and all this stuff, and whether they're some reporters do it consciously or not individually, I don't know, but the culture and media for sure
mhm,
is that's the language they use in
mhm,
their editorial meetings before they decide to do stories.
right.
And that's why that language gets perpetuated. They do that to every non-white group in this country, none more so than black people. you know
Mm,
um and that's why, to me, I see that as a direct connection between more hate crimes against black people than anybody else, because the rhetoric in media is against black people more than anybody else. And
mhm,
and then you start going down the list, and then you see immigrants, and then look at the media's language on immigrants. That when the other thing I want to touch on, because we covered this at Capital Press recently, was the Afghanistan war allies, right? For example, they've been waiting for 20 years for some sort of protection from the government. Like, they want to come here because they're afraid of the Taliban that they were against while they were there, for obvious reasons. So they
mhm,
want to come here and be protected for
mhm.
20 years, and they still don't have that protection. There are Afghan war allies still in Afghanistan waiting to get here. But how many Ukrainians just walked in here and they didn't do anything? They weren't war allies.
Didn't do a
They were
thing.
just
They just
right. And
existed.
how many countries did they skip over to get here?
Hmm.
So like, the concessions we make for white groups compared to what we do for non-white groups, whether it's immigration, whether it's social services, whether it's fucking law enforcement, education, I mean, go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
it always favored white communities, wealthy white communities, and poor white people, like a lot of poor white people are just collateral damage to white supremacy. It was Lee Atwater. He was, worked with Nixon. He's a really bad racist dude way back in the day. He worked for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
presidents, including Reagan. I don't know if you know who Lee Atwater is, but he
I
died when he
remember
was
the
40.
Atwater. He was he may have been the reason they kicked off the protest at Howard University. He was elected president of the board of directors of Howard University, historically black college in Washington D.C. And at that time, that particular student body was like, "Oh hell no,
Right.
no, not
Like
you."
he was,
Whatever that I don't think it was the Willie Horton. It was something racist he came up with. They was
well,
like,
he,
"Oh
he,
no, no, not you. Get to stepping."
he was one of the historically in all the research that I've done with
Mm-hmm.
systemic racism. So he is the first person that I came across
Mm-hmm.
who said we no longer use the N word, right? We
Right.
use attacks on busing, we use attacks on social services, we use attacks
The
on this because we know it's going to affect the black community more than anybody else.
the
And his
buzzword.
exact words were, will some white people suffer? Yes, they will,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a small price to pay. And I'm like,
Collateral
you are
damage.
literally
Collateral damage.
sacrificing, right? Like if this is a race thing, like he held it to be, you're sacrificing your own people just so you could
A small
commit harm
percentage,
on,
a percentage of your own
right, a
people,
percentage, right, a percentage,
because
right, small
this is the
percentage,
real enemy over here. That's much
right,
larger. So he's the one that came up with the dog whistle, the
right,
buzzword.
about social
Yeah,
services. That's
and that's why
where
the
welfare
students at
queens came
Howard
from.
said, "Hell no, get
Right,
him out of here." Yeah.
right. And he was to this day is still an influence in our politics. Some of the policies that he championed, that everybody from Nixon to Reagan to senators, like, I mean, we could go down the list. There's probably 150 people. All he championed a lot of those policies, and those policies are still in place today.
Hmm.
So we still suffer with the consequences. And he died at the age of 40 from, I don't even remember what, I don't really care, but he
Right.
uh he tried to atone for, oh, I was wrong, this was bad, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, a fine time for you to atone for it. Meanwhile, we're going to have to deal with it for the next 50 years.
Right. You
So
won't be here for the next 50 years, but we will,
right,
with your
right,
fault,
right,
dealing with your bullshit.
right. So it's just, this is all culmination from that. This is like, you can literally watch society evolve from the abolition of slavery to now,
Hmm.
and watch the media evolution, and you can easily see why we are where we are.
Hmm.
And that's because, like, when David Duke and his clan, he was the suit and tie clan guy. Remember, he made these guys clean cut. He normalized them. They're in politics. They've been in politics. You know what I mean? So, he normalized them. And while his success in politics was limited, let's not pretend he didn't succeed in politics, because he did. And so
Hmm.
did a lot of others.
Hmm.
And some of those people are in media. Some of those people control media, so some of those people's kids are in media. So, you know what I mean? Those
and
hate
and
is
and that was really the crux of why I wanted to do the show today using these examples, the complicity of the media. I'm not even sure if I should probably stop calling it the complicity of the media. It's all a white supremacist society, even though media
right,
likes to position itself as the watchdogs of power. It's all the same thing,
right,
regardless of how they position themselves or pretend to see themselves. Mm.
right. And it's all in the name of trying to maximize profits, and they will exploit whoever they have to exploit to do it. With the exception of white people, they'll exploit a few,
A few.
because they're gonna hurt everybody else more. And that's how this works, and that's how it's worked for since day one, man. Like, since before the Revolutionary War.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's crazy how so many avowed white supremacists are still in politics today. It
Hmm.
wasn't that long ago that we had Steve King,
Hmm.
in Congress, running his mouth with, I mean, not even really dog whistles. I mean, he was straight up anti-black, anti. Yeah, it's so crazy to me, and you know, when the media tries to portray themselves as, no, look, we're not calling it a, I'm gonna use the border again. We're not calling it a migrant crisis or a border crisis, right?
Mhm.
We're calling it a humanitarian crisis. They're still calling it a crisis when it's not a crisis. You see what I'm saying? So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what you call it. If you continue to use the word crisis, you're going to program people to think that there's this massive flood of people just pouring in over the border when it's just not that. It's
Yeah.
just not that.
You
It's
know,
crazy.
several years ago, I was living somewhere back east, and I was asking about what was happening in LA or California. And there was an ad. I don't, I guess it was in the 90s. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. But it was a concern about immigration. But the ad showed a gang of people. And by gang, I'm talking about it looked like hundreds of people just running down a hill like they were running towards the border, trying to climb over the fence. And when I saw that ad, this just like with this full page ad for Dow George. When I saw that commercial, I was like, "Oh my God, there's war in California."
Right.
That's what these images, that's what this propaganda is designed to do. This is war, and
You
black
know, and
Latino
it's,
people and Latinx people, we got to wake up to the fact that
yeah,
this is war.
right. And you say it like that, but there are Republicans who literally tried to convince us that we need to go to war with Mexico. Really? With Mexico? They're like, oh, the cartels, the cartels. Here's the thing a lot of white people don't seem to understand is like 95% of all drugs come through ports of entry. It's not
Mm,
migrants bringing it across, it's trucks, it's ships, it's cars, right? And
mm.
then like 90, upper 90% are Americans bringing it. So like 80%, 88% of all fentanyl that comes across the border is brought by Americans. It's being
Well,
brought
you know
by
what they say.
Americans for Americans.
You know what they say. Don't allow facts to get in the way of a good lie.
Right, right,
Okay,
right.
don't do that.
It's
Don't do that.
crazy. Right. And Republicans want to say, let's go to war with Mexico because of the cartels. How about you take care of the people that are bringing it, like your people, like Americans that are, and yes, a lot of them are white. And let's not pretend cops don't do this either. Like, remember the police union chief lady who got busted in California? She was smuggling drugs from Thailand and China, and
Okay.
yeah, she was a police union boss, and she got caught smuggling that stuff. Like, she would buy it online
Mm.
on like the deep web and had it shipped. Sometimes like two packages or three packages were shipped to her office at the police union. Like, and then I don't even want to get into the Dixie Mafia, right? So
Right.
I don't know if you guys know about those white boys, but dude, I mean, you want to talk about drug smugglers? That's who's probably behind 90% of it is the Dixie Mafia, and there are a lot of cops in the Dixie Mafia.
Oh my God. Listen, it's 9:57. I was telling you I usually go, 90 minutes or 2 hours
Sure,
unless Mr. Arthritis starts knocking at the door. And he's kind of ringing the doorbell now.
I got you.
But and I want to thank you again for putting up with my unpreparedness. But I had to get it off my chest. I had to
I,
get it
I
off my chest, and I had to do this. And I want to thank you for coming on today and helping me process and get this out. As
sure.
long as until the BPMers kick me off, as long as I have a home here on Black Power Media, you, Arturo Dominguez, have a home here on Rootwork.
That's
So
awesome. Thank you so much.
want to definitely bring you back when I'm better prepared
Sure,
and
sure.
some more issues. Anything you want to bring to my attention, you just let me know.
I
But
will. Yeah.
yeah, I this is. it's a declaration of war, brother. It definitely is a declaration of war.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you for, um, I mean, it's been an honor to be here. We met a long time ago in the Writers and Editors of Color Collective and stuff like that.
Right,
And
right.
I'm glad that our relationship is evolving to this point because this was awesome. And like I said, I feel honored and blessed to be the place where you were able to vent. Where you were able to get it out, and we can have a good discussion,
Yeah,
and like kind of fill people in because it just happened to be the luck of the draw that we got on here to talk about Barbers Hill on the day that they're in court. So hopefully this will bring more attention to it. Hopefully more people will
yeah,
pay attention and see what's going to happen today. And I hope Greg Abbott loses. I hope he gets his ass kicked in court. So
absolutely, absolutely. So, despite my being unprepared, it may have been, uh, it was right on time
it
after
sure
all.
was.
So,
Sure
yeah,
was. Sure was.
please, please continue to tell people again how they can find you. In addition to Extreme Arturo, tell us
Well,
about your antagonist.
Antagonist, it's a two-tiered thing. I have a publication on Medium. That's where most of our, writers of color, Black writers, and a lot of writers from around the world that publish there. And I also have antagonistmag.com. I don't cross-publish stuff from Medium to there without a writer's explicit permission because Medium, they earn money and I'm poor, so I can't really afford to pay people to put them on the Antagonist Mag. So unless they give me explicit permission to do it, and I rarely ever ask. So at Antagonist Mag, you see a lot of my work and some work from other outlets that allow me to republish their stuff.
Hmm.
I'm also at Unicorn Riot, Medium, and Substack, but on social media, I'm at Extreme Arturo everywhere. I just started a little channel here on YouTube a month or two ago. I got maybe some shorts, short stuff. I haven't really, but I plan to start a podcast soon here on YouTube. So I'd like to do this, what you guys do. So, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I've been writing, as a journalist, mainly spoken word type stuff for 10, 20 years now, but I'm
Hmm.
starting to get into the video media stuff and all
Hmm.
that. So
Okay,
I
cool.
appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. Like I said, as long as I got a home, you got a home, and now that I'm out from under some pressures, I intend to get back into um, Rootwork here on Black Power Media, full swing or a little bit fuller swing. So, thank you
Awesome.
again. Thank you again so much for coming
Yes,
on
ma'am. Thank you.
and putting up with my madness. I appreciate you, brother. I really do.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll holler at you later.
All righty.
Okay, peace.
Bye.
All right, so Mr. Arthritis is ringing my doorbell. I'm about to go answer it. If you have not liked this video, please like the video. Please share the video. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe here on YouTube to Black Power Media. They also want you to go over to Patreon and subscribe over there. Please let folks know. Please let folks know. Please let folks know. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the BPMers. I appreciate the platform. Thank you all for hanging with me. And again, I'm working to get more consistent with interacting with you all. You all stay safe, take care, and I will catch you on the next one. All right? Peace.